Machination refers to a crafty, secret, and usually sinister scheme or plot engineered through deception and manipulation. The word has origins from the Latin word machinare, meaning to devise or to contrive. Its synonyms include plot, scheme, and conspiracy. And to bring this word to life, I will tell you a story of machination so intricately crafted it hid in plain sight. On October 9, 2020, Jimmy Fate, a 49-year-old American Airlines IT manager who was known as a reliable co-worker and a friendly neighbor, and his wife, Jennifer Fate, took their dog Maggie out for their usual morning walk through the neighborhood of Oakland Cliff in Dallas, Texas. It was a normal day in their neighborhood until suddenly it wasn't. Within moments, their ordinary routine had turned into horror. Out of nowhere, a marksman appeared. He ambushed the couple, raised his firearm, and opened fire on Jamie, shooting him 7 times. 3 shots to the head, 3 to the chest, and 1 to the groin. Jamie collapsed instantly. The gunman then turned to Jennifer. He restrained her hands with duct tape, then he started tugging at her finger, attempting to steal her ring. However, when the jewelry would not budge, he ran back to his vehicle, a black Nissan pickup truck that neighbors described as having a distinctive T decal on the back window, and sped away. Neighbors who had heard the gunshot and Jennifer's scream then cautiously came running out to see what the chaos happening in their quiet street was all about, and they called 911. First responders arrived, but it was too late for Jamie. He had lost his life right there at the scene. Jennifer was in shock. She was so heartbroken and traumatized. The neighborhood was devastated. How could this have happened to this couple who were so well loved in the community? Detectives began investigating this senseless act of violence. They went house to house, canvassing the neighborhood, collecting CCTV footage from surrounding homes. They questioned neighbors, trying to get any information that might help them with the case. But everyone they questioned was cleared. They all described Jamie as a lovable, easygoing guy. Their neighbor, Melissa and Shamona, who lived next door to Jamie and Jennifer for years, said the Fates were a great couple who welcomed them and their 7 adopted children like family, inviting them to swim anytime they liked in their backyard pool. They just gave them the code to the back gate so they could swim anytime they wanted, even when they were out. Jamie was a guy who cared about people, no matter their race or their religion. In the days that followed, this story hit the news, and very quickly the community rallied around Jennifer. Friends set up a GoFundMe campaign to help Jennifer with the expenses and honor the late Jamie. This GoFundMe raised over $60,000. Jennifer also came on local TV news, crying and begging the community for help to find Jamie's killer. She said she needed answers. She needed to make sense of this tragedy and needed to get some closure. However, the brutal manner of Jamie's loss led investigators to believe that this was not just a random robbery gone wrong. There had to be a motive. The only lead they had was that distinctive T decal that was captured on the back window of the vehicle. And this happened in Dallas, and in Dallas, a T decal sticker is assumed to be for the Texas Rangers baseball team. So the deduction was that the gunman was local to the state. But this lead did not quite seem to be of much help because the Texas Rangers were a popular baseball team, and the black pickup truck was also a run-of-the-mill in the area. When investigators questioned Jennifer to get the details of what had actually taken place, she cooperated and was very open with police, recounting the events of that day in as much detail as she could about the shooter. She described the shooter as a man with dark eyes wearing a mask. She said the shooter's gun was silver and he had tackled her to the ground when she started screaming and tried to run. Then he started hitting her and then tied up her hands with a duct tape and tried to take her ring. She was so distraught. She said she had no idea who would want her husband dead. Investigators also looked at former employees who had been recently let go due to cuts as a fallout of the pandemic. Perhaps it was a disgruntled employee. But even they had only good things to say about Jamie. They understood the reason for the cuts and did not blame Jamie for that at all. For homicide detectives, especially when a murder seems so targeted, they start with the victim's closest relationships. So they requested Jennifer's phone record. Buried in those records, they found a clue. In April 2020, 6 months before the shooting, Jennifer had texted a friend and told her she had gotten back in touch with an ex-boyfriend Darren Lopez, and that their communication had quickly grown intense. However, there were no records of any communication from this ex that she had reconnected with, which meant that the communication had been deleted. But why? Well, detectives decided to look into who this Darren Lopez was. Darren was a U.S. Army veteran living in Tennessee. He had been honorably discharged after surviving a traumatic brain injury in combat, and Darren had a black Nissan pickup truck. This did not seem to be just a coincidence, albeit Darren lived all the way down in Tennessee, which was over 900 miles or 1,448 kilometers away. So detectives in Dallas reached out to detectives in Tennessee to help them have a look at Darren's car surveillance star, and they find that Darren's car had the T decal on it. So it happened that while detectives in Dallas were looking for a local with the assumption that the T decal was a symbol for the Texas Rangers, it turned out that T is also the emblem for the University of Tennessee. Darren's daughter, who was a student of the University of Tennessee, had given him the sticker for his truck. Investigators also found out that Jennifer and Darren had been in near constant contact, texts, calls, and emails, even though she was married to Jamie. While on the surface, it looked like an emotional affair, underneath it was something far darker. To understand how this plot came together, you would have to understand that this long-distance romance was not built on nostalgia. It was built on fear, or at least an illusion of it. Some months into this affair, Jennifer started feeding Darren fear. She told him that Jamie was violent and had been abusing her physically and sexually. She told him she was terrified of him and scared for her life. And she did not stop there. According to federal documents, she created fake email accounts and even sent messages to Darren, pretending to be Jamie with an account she had created in his name. These emails were taunting Lopez with graphic claims of abuse that investigators later concluded never actually happened. Jennifer also posed as though she was her friend in other emails who was backing up the abuse story that Jennifer had told, all to reinforce the idea that Jamie was a monster who needed to be stopped. In reality, colleagues and friends described Jamie as a kind and well-liked man with no evidence of him abusing Jennifer. But Lopez, living hundreds of miles away and dealing with cognitive and emotional issues from his brain injury, did not know this, and he believed Jennifer. Over time, Jennifer escalates from victim narratives to something much more direct. In August 2020, she essentially manipulated him to so much anger and trauma in asking him to kill her husband, else she would not be able to survive it. And Darren agreed that such an evil person had to go. And so, on October 8, Darren drove all the way from Tennessee to Texas to carry out the plan. He arrived in Dallas and waited for the moment he knew was coming. And come the next morning, October 9th, at around 7:30 a.m., Darren ambushed Jamie and shot him 7 times. Then he briefly interacts with Jennifer before fleeing in his black Nissan Titan pickup truck with that distinctive T decal on the back window. By the time neighbors ran out to help and police arrived, Darren was already on his way headed back to Tennessee. At first, Jennifer's version of events controlled the story, but the details started to stack up against her. Investigators used surveillance videos, license plate checks, and travel records to reconstruct Darren's trip from Tennessee to Dallas and back to Tennessee. And with the identified black Nissan Titan pickup matching witness description, the next step, which was crucial, was to search Darren's vehicle and his home. Inside Darren's home, investigators found a 45 caliber handgun, the same caliber that shot Jamie. They also found a mark similar to what Jennifer described the gunman wore. Ballistic testing also linked the handgun to the shell casings that was recovered at the crime scene, and traces of Jamie's blood was reportedly found on the weapon. After gathering enough evidence, authorities arrested Darren Lopez in January 2021. Now, with Lopez in custody, investigators turned their full attention to Jennifer. Investigators already knew about the phone records and the prior relationship, but they needed digital conversation that tied Jennifer directly to the murder. But Jennifer factory resetted her phone and had even texted Darren to do same as a pressure mounted. But Darren, perhaps not tech savvy, did not fully reset his phone. So when authorities searched Darren's phone, they were able to uncover months of messages, manipulative emails, and romantic exchange and discussions. In a message to Darren after the crime, she had told him to remove the T decal sticker from his car when she had found out that police was looking for that distinctive feature of the getaway car. Meanwhile, they had also traced that the GoFundMe money that was raised for Jennifer for funeral and family expenses was used by Jennifer to pay for vacation trips and a large screen TV for Darren. All of this while publicly portraying herself as a grieving widow. Well, in February 2021, Jennifer was arrested. Prosecutors pointed to two main drivers as Jennifer's motive. Number one, an obsessive relationship with Darren, and number two, a significant life insurance payout. Jamie reportedly had a life insurance policy worth around $629,000, which Jennifer had planned to use to build a new life with Darren once Jamie was gone. She had described Darren as her one and only love. Facing overwhelming evidence, in February 2022, Jennifer eventually pled guilty. In exchange, prosecutors agreed not to seek the death penalty and instead pursued a life sentence. And in June 2022, a federal judge sentenced Jennifer to life in prison. Darren Lopez also faced state murder charges in Texas and a federal firearm charge. And though prosecutors argued that he was manipulated, they concluded that he still chose to carry out the crime. He pled not guilty, and his legal process began with prosecutors laying out detailed timeline of his involvement. On stand, Darren recounted the pain and anguish he felt when he finally realized he had killed an innocent man and said he truly believed he was protecting Jennifer. But after a week-long trial, he was found guilty and sentenced to 62 years in prison. This case shows how far manipulation can go when paired with greed and emotional control. Jennifer built an entire alternate reality, fake abuse, fake emails, fake danger around the man who trusted her. She turned grief into performance, made national news as a mourning wife, and all the while she knew that the mystery gunman was her own boyfriend who she was also manipulating. And at the heart of the story is Jamie Fate, a man whose life was cut short on his morning dog walk, blindsided by someone he never saw coming. He had no idea that the person he trusted most, his wife, had turned their marriage into a life insurance funded exit plan. But what do you think about this case? Do you think Darren's sentence was harsh, considering his brain injury as a war veteran and that he was manipulated, or was it deserved? Please drop your thoughts in the comments. Thank you all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.